It's Fired Up Friday, and welcome to the Bad Influence Podcast with yours truly, Bjordan Banderas. Listen to what I must tell you today. The amount of energy you spend trying to prove yourself to people who aren't even paying attention is quietly costing you the very thing you're trying to prove. You know the feeling, the itch to post something that lets them know you're winning. That one. The urge to drop something into a conversation, casually, strategically, that makes it clear you're moving while they're standing still. The satisfaction you imagine feeling when the person who doubted you finally sees it, finally gets it, finally has to admit to themselves, if not to you, that they were wrong. That feeling, that imagined moment of vindication, it's been driving more of your decisions than you've been willing to admit. Oh yeah, it happens. And here's what that costs you. Because it always costs you something. Every moment you spend constructing the narrative of your success for an audience that didn't believe in you, you are not building the success itself. You are building the performance of it. Yeah. And performance and progress are not the same thing. Performance requires an audience. Progress requires only you. So be honest right now. Be absolutely honest. How much of what you've been doing lately has been genuinely for the vision? And how much has been for the reaction? How many decisions have had their weight, their direction, shifted even slightly by the question of how it will look to the people who counted you out? How many times have you chosen the visible move over the necessary one? The one that photographs well over the one that actually builds? That's not ambition. That's a wound running an agenda. Yes, it is. And the wound has a name. Oh, yes, it does. It's the need to be seen as successful by specific people who made you feel like you wouldn't be. And that need, as human as it is, as understandable as it is a leash. A very long leash that lets you run far enough to feel free, but always pulls you back to the same point of reference. Them. Their opinion, their awareness, their eventual acknowledgement. And as long as they are the measuring stick, you will never be fully your own. Your energy will always be split between the work and the audience, between the climb and the look back to see who's watching. And a person who keeps looking back while climbing climbs slower than they should. So today, we cut the leash. Yes. Yes, we do. The need to prove yourself didn't arrive fully formed. It was built slowly, specifically, in the places where your value was first called into question. And until you trace it back to where it actually started, it will keep running the show regardless of how much success you accumulate. So, let's go back. Yes, let's go back. Back to the first time someone whose opinion mattered to you made you feel like you needed to earn your place. Maybe it was early. Maybe it was a household where love and approval felt like the same thing. Where being seen, really seen, positively seen, required performance. Required results, required being the version of yourself that fit what the people around you needed you to be. And ordinary, just being, was never quite enough to get the warmth you were looking for. So, you learned to achieve, right? Not just because achieving felt good, because achieving got you something that just existing didn't. Attention. Acknowledgement. The specific feeling of mattering to someone whose opinion set the temperature of your world. And that wiring went deep. So deep that by the time you became an adult, by the time the original audience was long gone, you had already transferred the dynamic onto every new environment you entered. New people? Same need. New circumstances? Same question underneath all of it. Do you see me? Do I matter here? Am I enough in this room? Oh, I've been there. And I see a lot of you going through that right now. Or maybe it didn't come from home. Maybe it came from a specific moment of public dismissal. Yeah, it happens too. A room where you were overlooked when you should have been seen, right? You know what I'm talking about. A decision that went against you when it shouldn't have. A person who had the authority to open a door and chose to keep it closed. Not based on your capability, but on their own limitation or bias or simple indifference. And the wound that moment created was not just disappointment. It was a question that lodged itself permanently in the back of your mind. Am I actually as capable as I think I am? Or was that moment the truth? And every subsequent success has been partly an attempt to answer that question. To collect enough evidence that the answer is definitively yes. But here's the thing about evidence collected to disprove a wound. It never fully lands. No, it doesn't. Because the wound is not a logical argument that can be won with counter evidence. It's an emotional imprint that lives beneath the logic entirely. And you can stack achievement on top of it indefinitely. And the wound will still be there underneath. It's still asking the same question every time a new room makes you feel like you have to prove your right to be in it. It is not sad, it's just life. Now, think about the specific people you've been building against. Those ones. The ones whose doubt has been sitting on the back of your mind like an uninvited audience. Where did they get that much real estate? Oh yeah. What gave them the authority to be the measuring stick? In most cases, it wasn't something they did. It was something that was already in you, an existing question about your own worth that their doubt landed in and amplified. They didn't create the wound, and you need to understand that. They found one that was already there and pressed on it. Yes, and your nervous system, doing exactly what nervous systems do, filed them as a threat. And threats don't get ignored. Threats get monitored, tracked, responded to. Which is why they're still in your head long after the moment passes. Long after their opinions stop having any practical relevance to your life. They're still there because the nervous system never got the signal that the threat was resolved. And the signal it's been waiting for, the one it thinks will finally close the loop, is their acknowledgement. Their concession, their moment of having to admit they were wrong about you. But that signal will never fully satisfy the wound because the wound isn't about them. It never was. It's about the version of you that absorbed someone else's doubt and started treating it as data about your own worth. And that version, the one still performing for the audience that dismissed them, deserves something better than a lifetime of chasing a moment of validation that won't deliver what it promises. It deserves to be released from the performance entirely. Yes. Release into the full, undiluted focus of a person who builds for the vision, and only the vision. Not for the reaction, not for the rear view, not for the moment of vindication. for the thing itself, because the thing itself is worth everything you have. Oh, yes. The need to prove yourself isn't just a mental habit. It lives in your body. And your body has been paying the price of it every single day that you've been building for the wrong audience. Oh, yes, it has. Feel what happens when you do something significant, something real, something that actually moves the needle, and nobody notices. Not the people you wanted to notice. Feel that specific deflation. The way the accomplishment, which you'll feel complete in itself, suddenly feels incomplete, like something is missing from it. Like the win only half landed because the people you built it against weren't watching when it happened. That deflation is physical. A dropping in the chest, a flatness that replaces what should have been full satisfaction. And that flatness tells you everything about where the real fuel has been coming from. Yes, it does. Because if the win was truly for the vision, if it was genuinely for the thing itself, the absence of their awareness wouldn't cost you anything. The win will land completely regardless of who saw it. But it doesn't land that way, does it? And your body registers the gap every single time. Now, think about the energy expenditure, the specific drain of maintaining awareness of people who are not in your daily life. The mental bandwidth consumed by tracking, even passively, what they're doing, where they are, whether they've noticed your progress. That's not nothing. That is real cognitive and emotional energy being redirected away from the work and toward the audience. And you feel it as a kind of low-grade restlessness that never fully resolves. A buzzing in the background of the focus moments. An inability to be completely present in the work because a part of you is always slightly elsewhere. In the imagined future moment where the proof is undeniable and the acknowledgement finally comes. Feel your shoulders right now. The tension that lives there. Is any of it the tension of genuine effort and focused pursuit? Or is some of it the tension of performing? Of carrying the awareness of being watched, even by people who aren't actually watching, into every move you make? Ooh, good question. Because performing is physically different from building. Building uses clean energy, directed, purposeful, satisfying in its own execution. Performing uses anxious energy, split, self-conscious, never fully at rest because the audience's response is always uncertain. And you've been running on a mixture of both for longer than you realize. Oh yes, you have. Think about the moments after you post something, share something, put something visible out into the world that was partly designed to land in a specific way for specific people. The checking that follows, the refresh. Oh, we all have done that, right? The scan for the response, the specific awareness of whether the people you built it for have seen it yet. Oh, I've done that so many times. Feel what that checking does to your nervous system. The anticipation that sits in your stomach like something unresolved. Oh, that's not a good feeling. The slight anxiety of waiting for a verdict from people whose opinion you tell yourself no longer matters. That anxiety is awful. That anxiety is the body telling you the truth that the mind is still negotiating. It matters. It still matters more than you want it to. And the energy of that mattering, sustained day after day, decision after decision, accumulates into a specific kind of exhaustion. Not the exhaustion of hard work, the exhaustion of divided attention, of never being fully in one place, because the performance requires you to always be partially in another. Partially in the work, partially in the audience's imagined reaction, partially building, partially proving. And a person divided against themselves cannot operate at their ceiling, cannot bring their full force to bear on the thing that actually matters, cannot experience the clean, complete satisfaction of building something purely because it needs to be built. And that satisfaction, the full, undivided, audience-free satisfaction of pure creation, is exactly why you've been one decision away from your entire career. Let's hold the mirror up, all the way up. Yes, it's that time on this episode. Because this is the part where we stop talking about the pattern and start looking at the full price of it. Because it has a price. Not the emotional price, the actual, measurable, already happening price. The one showing up in your work, your focus, your results. Let's start with the most expensive cost of all. The work you didn't do because you were doing the performance instead. The hours that went into crafting the narrative of the climb rather than the climb itself. The energy that went into making the progress visible rather than making the progress real. That's not a small number. Add it up. Honestly. Just add it up. The time spent on the presentation of the work rather than the depth of it. The decision shaped even slightly by optics rather than pure strategy. The moments of genuine creative flow interrupted by the question of how this looks rather than whether this works. That is your ceiling sitting right there. Not external, internal. Build brick by brick. From every moment the audience got more of your attention than the work did. Now, look at the quality of what you've been building. Not the quantity, the quality, the depth of it, the craftsmanship of it, the difference between what you produce when you are completely absorbed in the work, present, focus, building purely because the thing demands to be built, and what you produce when part of your attention is managing the narrative around it. You know the difference. You felt both. You know what it feels like to create something and think, that is exactly what it needed to be. And you know what it feels like to create something and think, that will end well. Those are not the same feeling, and I want you to understand that. And they do not produce the same quality. The work built for the vision has a different density to it. Oh yes, it does. A different integrity. The work built partly for the audience has a hollowness at its center that you can feel even when nobody else can see it. And you've been producing both, when you could have been producing only the first kind, the kind that is going to move you forward. Now, look at the people who have actually been watching. Not the ones you've been building against. The ones who have been genuinely paying attention to your work. The potential collaborators, the real opportunities, the people who could have opened doors that matter. What have they been seeing? Have they been seeing a person fully locked in, certain of their direction, unbothered by the noise, moving with the clean confidence of someone who builds for the work and nothing else? Or have they been seeing flashes of that, interrupted by moments where the performance bleeds through? Where the need to be seen overrides the groundedness that makes someone truly worth watching. Because the people who matter most The ones whose attention actually changes trajectories, they can feel the difference between authentic momentum and perform momentum. Yes, they can. And authentic momentum is magnetic in a way that performance simply cannot replicate. No, it cannot. Think about the time, the specific, irreplaceable time that has gone into maintaining awareness of people who are not contributing to what you're building. Yes, that kind of time. Not enemies, not obstacles, just people who don't matter to the work, who have no role in where you're going, but have been occupying mental real estate that belongs to the mission. That real estate is not free. It never is. Every square foot occupied by their imagined reaction is a square foot not occupied by your next move, your next level, your next breakthrough. And breakthroughs require your full attention. Not 90%, not 95%, everything, 100%. The problems worth solving, the opportunities worth seizing, they require a mind that is completely present in the work. And you have not been giving them a completely present mind. No, you have not. Now, look at the version of success you've been building toward. Be honest about what the version looks like in your head. Yes, be honest. Is it a version defined entirely by what you've created? By the quality and impact of the work itself? Or does it have an audience built into it? A specific cast of people who are present for the moment when it becomes undeniable. Who are forced by circumstance to finally acknowledge what you always knew. Yeah, those people. If the audience is built into the vision is compromised. Because you are not building toward the thing itself. You are building toward a moment of external validation that the thing is supposed to produce. And those are fundamentally different destinations. One of them ends in something that lasts, which is what you want. The other ends in a moment, a brief, insufficient, already fading moment that leaves you hungrier than you were before it arrived. Because validation from the people who doubted you doesn't fill the hole. No, it never does. It reveals how deep the hole actually is. And then you are back at the beginning with more success and the same wound, looking for the next thing that might finally be enough. That cycle has no end inside itself. It only ends when you decide the work is the point, not the reaction to it, not the vindication it produces, not the moment the rear view finally shows them falling behind. The work, just the work. Now, look at the version of you that is fully free of this. The version that moves through the world building purely, focused entirely on the vision, unbothered by the audience, measuring progress only against the work itself. That version is not distant. That version is you, with the weight of the performance finally set down. Yes, you finally put it down. And everything that version touches moves faster, because the full force of everything you are finally has one direction. Forward. Not forward and sideways, checking the rear view to see who's watching, just forward. Forward. Now we shift. Not away from everything we just covered. Through it. And out the other side into something cleaner. Oh yes. Because the truth we just sat in is not a life sentence. No, it is not. So don't get scared. Because it is a diagnosis. And the diagnosis, when you are honest enough to receive it, is the beginning of something better. So here is the reframe that changes everything. Proving yourself to people who doubted you is not ambition. It is borrowed motivation with an expiration date. Yes. And real ambition, the kind that sustains a life's work, the kind that builds something that actually lasts, that comes from a completely different source. It comes from the work itself, from the specific, personal, unshakable conviction that what you're building matters. Not because of how it will make anyone feel about you, but because it is genuinely worth building. That conviction doesn't require an audience. It doesn't require a rear view. It doesn't require a moment of vindication from people who were never qualified to set your ceiling in the first place. It requires only one thing. You, fully present, fully committed, fully focused in the work every single day, regardless of who's watching, regardless of whether the people who doubted you have noticed yet, regardless of whether the moment of undeniable proof has arrived. You build anyway, quietly, relentlessly, without announcement. Yeah, just keep going. And here's what that quietness actually produces. When you stop spending energy on the performance, when the full force of what you are gets redirected from the audience into the work changes. It gets better, faster, more precise, more original. Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Because the creative and executive capacity that was being split between building and proving, all of it is now available to the build. And a person building with everything they have, with zero energy bleeding into performance, is an entirely different force than a person building with half their attention on the audience. You have never operated at your full capacity, not while proving was still running in the background. And when you finally cut it, when the audience genuinely stops mattering, you will feel the difference immediately. Not as a concept, in your body, in the quality of your focus, in the depth of your work sessions, in the specific feeling of being completely inside the thing you're building with nothing pulling you sideways. That feeling is available to you. It's starting with the next decision you make about where your energy goes. So make the right decision. Yes. Now, let's talk about what silence actually communicates. Not the silence of someone who has nothing to say. No, that's not what I'm talking about. The silence of someone who is too busy building to explain themselves. That silence has weight to it that words never could. Because talk is cheap and universally available. Everyone has an explanation for why they're going to make it. Isn't that true? Almost nobody has the receipts. And the person who shows up with the announcement, who simply keeps building until the evidence is undeniable, that person commands a different kind of respect. Not the respect that gets handed out at the beginning when the story sounds good. The respect that gets earned at the end when the results speak for themselves. That respect is permanent. It doesn't require maintenance. It doesn't require it. It doesn't need to be defended or explained or reinforced by further performance. It simply exists, built into what you made, and it speaks every time someone encounters the work. That is what you are building toward. Not a moment, a body of work. Not a reaction, a legacy, not vindication, evidence. The kind that doesn't need a single word attached to it. And that's the best kind. So here's the new standard, not a resolution, not a mindset shift, a standard. You stop explaining yourself to people who didn't ask. You stop constructing narratives for audiences who weren't in the room when the work got done. You stop measuring your progress against the awareness of people who have no role in where you're going. I know, it's gonna be hard, but you can do it. And you redirect every single unit of that energy, all of it, back into the work, into the next level, the next build, the next version of the thing that is worth everything you have. That is the identity from this point forward. Not someone who proves, someone who builds, not someone who performs success for the people who doubted them. Someone who creates something so real and so solid that performance becomes irrelevant. Not someone who looks back. Someone who is so locked into what's ahead that the rear view stops existing as a reference point entirely. That identity doesn't need to be announced. It gets demonstrated in the work you put out, in the decisions you make when nobody's watching. That is true. In the consistency of someone who shows up for the build, regardless of the external temperature, regardless of whether the recognition has arrived yet, regardless of whether the people who counted you out have been forced to reckon with their mistake. You build, you keep building, you let the building be the whole story. And when it's done, when the work is undeniable, you won't need to say a single word. The work will say it louder than any explanation you could have offered, more permanently than any moment of confrontation could have produced, more completely than their acknowledgement ever would have satisfied. Now, think about the freedom on the other side of this. The specific freedom of a person who has genuinely stopped needing external validation to keep moving. Who has severed the connection between their momentum and anyone else's opinion of it. Who wakes up every morning with one question and one question only. What does the work need today? Not what will this look like? Not who will see this? Not will this finally be the thing that makes them understand? Just what does the work need? And then give it exactly that. Everything they have, cleanly, completely, without looking up. That is the most powerful, creative, and productive state a human being can operate from. And it is available to you the moment you decide that the rear view is no longer a place you look. And if this episode landed somewhere real, if something in here named the split you've been living inside and show you what becomes possible when you close it, hit that subscribe button, because every single Friday we come back to this exact arena. The one where excuses end and real work begins. Where performing stops and building takes over. Where the focus gets so clean and so complete that the results eventually speak for themselves without a single word of help from you. This is not a podcast for people who need the world's attention to keep moving. This is a podcast for people who are ready to move so well, so consistently, so completely, that the world's attention eventually becomes inevitable. Not chase, inevitable. There's a version of your success that arrives not because you perform your way there, but because you build your way there. Quietly, relentlessly, without explanation. And that version hits differently. Not just in the outcome, in the person you become in the process. Because the person who builds without the audience develops something that the person performing for one never does. An internal compass that doesn't need external confirmation to stay calibrated. A sense of their own direction that doesn't waver based on who is watching or who has noticed or who is finally being forced to reconsider. That compass is the most valuable thing this work produces. More valuable than the achievement itself. Because the achievement can be taken, the market can shift, the recognition can fade. Yes, it can. But a person with an unshakable internal compass, a person who knows what they're building and why and doesn't need a single outside voice to confirm it, that person is never truly stopped. They just keep building through the seasons where nobody's watching, through the stretches where the progress is invisible from the outside. You're going to encounter that through the moments where the old need to prove surfaces and whispers and gets answered not with performance, but with one more hour of real work. That is who you are becoming right now. In this decision, in this redirect of energy from the audience back to the work. The people in your rear view are not your motivation. They are not your measuring stick. They are not the reason this matters. The work is the reason this matters. Yes, it does. And the work has been waiting for all of you. Not the divided version, not the performing version. All of you, fully present, fully committed, fully free. And remember, the choice is yours.